Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam and Joel for another episode. Well, actually, this isn't Horror Express. This is a totally new thing where we're talking about Robocop. And it's not schlocky enough to be in the schlock thing. So I guess this is just a more general podcast.
Uncharted
But
territory.
it's Uncharted. We're actually getting into some decent movies that are not in the horror or martial arts subgenres. So it's going to be a little bit different. So today we're doing the original RoboCop, and I don't think I need to tell anything about it to anybody. Everybody knows it. Do I need to give a synopsis or anything?
I don't even know if we could do justice to it with the synopsis because there's almost no plot. I mean, think about it. A cop gets killed and is turned into a robot cop, and then he's a robot cop for a while, and that's the whole movie. Like, do they resolve anything really? Like, not really. They stop.
Yeah, they thwart the villain, and they.
Well, no, they don't. OCP's still around at the end of this.
No, OCP, the bigger villain, but I mean, they get rid of Dick Jones, and
they take down one of a board of directors filled with evil
I'm
monsters.
sure all the rest of them were nice guys. I mean,
well, that's a topic that we can. The second movie actually kind of gets into that territory, if I remember. So when we get to the second
alert,
movie,
they weren't nice guys.
Yeah. I mean, there's still even in the first
them.
one, but yeah. So I mean, obviously it's a Paul Verhoeven movie. It stars Peter Weller. It came out in '87, like I said, and it's RoboCop. And I don't think that I need to give anybody any description of it because they all would know what it is. And so, at the request of Joel, this is the movie that we've decided to do. We're going to try to do all three of the RoboCop movies. Somewhat unfortunately, I think, because part 3 is really bad. I'm fine watching part 2. I'm going to be miserable the whole time I'm watching part 3. And then I'm going to be miserable the whole conversation where we're discussing part 3. So
wait till you review the entire TV series.
No, I'm not touching the TV series.
And the remake.
No, I tried watching the remake when it came out, and I got about 30 or 40 minutes in, and I just had to stop. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I hate all those remakes when you accidentally turn them on. Like I remember 10 years ago turning on cable. I'm like, oh, Total Recall's on. I'll watch Total Recall, and I'm like, oh, this isn't Total Recall.
Yeah. This is a total crock.
Yeah. Well, they just both of those remakes, they just sucked out all of the stuff that made them fun. Dude, yeah,
exactly. They're not fun.
They were about as vanilla as you could be and they're all completely of their time because they're just whatever was in the air at that time. That's what we're gonna do. We're not looking forward. We're not looking back. We're in the now. And
absolutely
it's just
no vision. Yeah, it's just joyless IP pumping. These people just kept their copyright ability alive for the next 7 to 10 years, whatever it is. That's it. That's all those movies are. They're little things where they can go to their lawyers and be like, "Oh no, look, we used the IP. See, there's a whole movie. Yeah. We spent on it, and it made doesn't matter. Yeah, that's what those were for."
The remake was a piece of crap. I really tried, and I don't know. Maybe it gets astounding in the last 45 minutes of I don't remember how long it is, but
it doesn't.
Yeah, 45 minutes in, done.
No, I'm not going to subject our viewing audience to me just sitting here and shrieking at the corporate garbage that ironically destroyed RoboCop. Which, I mean, like, can you get a more ironic
always wins?
Do they though?
Well, but now that we've trashed the remake and part 3, let's talk about part 1, which is an incredible movie. I think. Do we all agree that this is like one of the greatest movies ever made, or are we in disagreement
it's perfect.
On that? Okay,
it is. This is maybe the world's most perfect propaganda film for 2 reasons. Number one, it's maybe the most if you love cops and police and violence, this is your movie. It's perfect, right? But if you hate those things, this is also your movie because it makes fun of all of it.
It's I think that its real target is the privatization of U.S. institutions. That to me seems to be the focus of it. And obviously they're making fun of American obsession with guns and violence and that kind of stuff too.
They knew what they were doing because they make fun of it by giving us as much as we could possibly want in 90 minutes of glorious ultra violence. So, yeah, man, mock me. That's great. I love it.
Well, it's an interesting one because I don't know. It's also got like a bit of an outsider perspective that that a satire of like American action movies or American culture normally wouldn't have. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, obviously, I know that he didn't write the movie; that the writers were responsible for a lot of the satire. But I think he still brought like, there's just this outside looking in element that made it more interesting.
Well, it was interesting when this movie came out because when the TV commercials made it look like a really dumb action movie, and it was like, but obviously we went and saw it. We're like, oh, that looks like a really stupid,
that's what I thought
action movie. We'll go see it. And someone that I'd already read like a lot of cyberpunk. I read Neuromancer, all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, this is actually an intelligent science fiction movie on top of being a dumb action movie at the same time. I mean, it's just a movie where anybody that can tolerate extreme violence can get something out of this movie. Obviously, if you're not cool with violence, no, you're not going to want to watch this. But otherwise,
that's pretty consistent between this and Starship Troopers, and I would say even Total Recall. Like people that are not comfortable watching violence on screen, they were always the ones that had the issue with a movie like this.
But
this is one of those things that, like, I don't usually warn people about the violence in a movie, but I'll warn them about this one.
Well, and also people got this one, just like Starship Troopers, people did get this one wrong where they misread what was trying to be conveyed in the, you know what I mean, through the movie. Because I know I've run into people that thought it was like a right-wing film or something, which is not.
They didn't get the parody. The joke was lost on them. But here's the thing: there are people that are like that sincerely love this movie, and the joke is also lost on them. So like,
I in defense of people that take that position too, I think there are people that don't agree with the critique that he's making, but like the movie still, and they can see the critique. You know what I mean?
The thing about this movie too is that it's not like it's loaded. It's not completely loaded. Like, basically like the cops, for example, it's like, it's sympathetic towards the police. It's like it's a fairly liberal message, but it's not like the cops are just the bad guys or something. So there's complexity. The characters are all people. So
the bad stuff is all coming from the privatization, Jamie. Like that's really what seems to be driving. In fact, I think they listed because he lists at the beginning like all the things that they've privatized, and I think he says hospitals, space exploration, prisons, and the police. And it's kind of funny because I don't know the actual timeline, but I feel like space exploration wasn't privatized at that point.
No.
Now it's become privatized, and I feel like if prisons were being privatized, must have been very early on, and this become a very big thing. So it's interesting that those have all kind of one by one become privatized since the movie, or at least completed. That process has been more completed, maybe.
The satire on this really holds up over time, I have to say.
But back to Adam's point about this being marketed as an action movie, because this was 87, so I was like 10 when this came out, or like maybe 11, and I saw it in the movies, and I remember being like, I'm pretty resilient as a viewer, but that initial scene really bothered me where he gets killed. And I think because up to that point, I never saw a hero of the movie get killed like that. It didn't occur to me, but also how just brutal. It's just like they just keep taking things away from him. I think I mentioned this to you guys after the podcast last time, but the closest I can compare it to is at the end of $1 Million Baby, where he kind of slowly takes away any hope that she might make a recovery. And I feel like that's sort of in a much more condensed scale what happens in this scene, where like first his hand goes. It's like, okay, maybe he can survive without his hand, and then his arm goes. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe he can kind of survive without the arm, but then they just start blasting him. And then you're like, okay, maybe they'll be able to repair his body. And then they shoot him through the head, and it's like, okay, no, he's gone.
He's definitely dead.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love that they actually kill him. Like, they don't fuck around. They're like, no, he's clinically dead before they turn him into Robocop. Yeah. Like, flatline.
He's dead, and he probably has serious brain damage too. Like, they shot him through the head. So, which I think is kind of interesting because it explains a lot of the difficulties of the memory. Like, he's got all these gaps in his memory, and so I I tend to think of the being shot through the head as the reason for that. It's kind of like a regarding Henry type situation.
Yeah, it avoids the, when Murphy remembers who he is, just going back to being Murphy. It's like that isn't really an option. It's like, okay, he kind of has to reinvent himself.
I think in the second one, Joel, don't they get into that a little bit? Like, isn't he stalking his old family or something in the second one?
Well, he tries to figure out his identity a lot more in the second one, in a bunch of really interesting ways. We got to get to that one when we get to that one. Like I told you, it holds up. It's not Verhoeven directed, which surprised me because I was watching it and I was like, this is so good. Verhoeven knocked it out of the park twice. And the first thing it is, it's like directed by this other dude. And I'm like, oh, okay. Way to nail the tone, dude.
So, but just to bring it to something Joel wanted to say too, because so we have that scene, and obviously, and Verhoeven has said that's meant to be like a crucifixion scene, right? Like he's explicitly said that. He's explicitly said that RoboCop is an American Jesus. And Joel, you wanted to get into that topic.
Well, I think that one of the quotes, and I'm definitely paraphrasing somehow, but I think the quote was that like he's supposed to be like the American version of the Jesus story. And he uses an enormous amount of violence because it's American. So, of course, he does. And I was like, I always loved that idea that, like, and it really follows it really closely. You have someone who's got these really heroic, noble qualities, and he's killed pursuing them. And then he rises from the dead as, like, this invincible version of himself. And I don't know. There's something really beautiful about the idea, to me at least, that this version of Jesus is like the opposite of the forgiveness and bring you to heaven Jesus. He's just gonna shoot your dick off because you're an awful rapist. Go to hell.
He says, "I'm not arresting you," right? So I guess you could say that's like the second coming. I don't know. Maybe that's like the more angry version of Jesus. But the it's also interesting too, because then it's like, okay, if he's Jesus, who's God? And you kind of say, oh, it's the corporation. The corporation is the God in America, because the old man is kind of like,
It's got 3 letters, OCP.
Yeah, and the old man kind of feels like a godlike figure in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's just like, and he's even painted a little bit benevolent. Like, of the people there, he seems to be the more benevolent. At least if you're picking between him and Dick Jones, like he's vaguely trying to do some amount of good, even if profits are his number one priority.
He has the same kind of inhumanity that Old Testament God has a lot, like there's something about him that's like, he's so corporate, he's sort of lost that human element and he's become something else, And again, you could see that as a sort of transcendence, because you only ever see him on the highest room of the highest floor in the highest building in the whole movie.
But
there's a lot to it. It's really clever.
No, that's true. Yeah, I guess you don't see him anywhere else, do you? But I like how the Jesus thing, because when I first heard about the American Jesus thing, like I think I forget when I became familiar with that, but I know at one point I was watching RoboCop again, and then I must have seen the DVD commentary track or something. That's probably, I can't remember. It must have been on that where I heard it. And I remember really wondering, well, okay, like that's interesting, but how does that tie to the satire? Jamie, like I didn't get how that connected to it.
You don't get how making a violent Jesus is an American satire of culture?
What I mean is, what I didn't get was the corporate satire, and then I started to realize, oh, it's because what he's saying is that he's using the Jesus story to talk about what our priorities are as a culture, and how, like I was saying before, like the corporation is God. And so all of that, like that's where it started to, then I started to appreciate it more, because I was like, oh, it's not just something that's detached from the corporate side of it. The whole thing kind of mixes together in a unified idea. But yeah, I don't know. That's, but the other thing too that's interesting is apparently Verhoeven, he's an atheist, but he is he wrote a book about Jesus, which I didn't know. Yeah, he wrote a book about the historical Jesus. He's a member of the Jesus Seminar, and they're kind of like you could almost call them like rogue scholars who, not rogue scholars.
I heard you.
Who are, they're kind of like, like the new atheist movement and all that crowd. They're kind of like them, but for historical Jesus, if that makes sense.
I'm an atheist too, and one of my most one of the things I love studying is versions of the Bible and the historicity of the Bible, and like it's really fascinating stuff. It's like a cornerstone of all Western culture, and I think almost all scientific thought finds its roots somewhere in like biblical scholarship. It's amazing. It's an incredibly rich, deep cultural touchstone that has influenced the lives of millions and millions of people. It's not a small thing. I mean, like, you can be an atheist and appreciate the enormity of that.
No, and I think it's like you said, it's like a common language. You sort of like, if you read old literature. I remember like when I took my first, I haven't taken that many literature courses, but when I took like my survey literature course, the first thing the teacher said was you need to know the Bible if you want to understand old Western literature, because there's so many references to it.
Well, I mean, almost all of the classics are, if not directly biblical, then all like just right after that. I mean, like, you got the Divine Comedy, you've got Paradise Lost, like tons.
And even something like Moby Dick, like like the first line is like "Call me Ishmael," right? So it's like you have like these, just like it's just there was a familiarity with what those references would mean in old literature, and so I can see what you're saying here, where. This is even if you're not conscious of it, like when I first saw Robocop, I'm sure I didn't see the Jesus thing, but I think in the back of your mind, but I think you're connecting to it, like you're connecting to these ideas that you've grown up
knowing. Spiritual Longinus scene, I didn't even think about that. Whenever Boddicker is like stabbing him with the thing, he hits him right in the spiritual Longinus point. Damn, I didn't even catch that. Oh man, it's so good. It's so good, damn it.
And that's the scene where he's walking on water too.
It is. Oh my god.
There's a lot of stuff like that in there. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't know that he wrote a book on Jesus until last night after I saw the movie. I was like, because I was like, how much does he know about Jesus? I'm kind of curious. And so I looked up how much does Verhoeven know about Jesus. And the first thing that came up was he wrote a book about Jesus. And so I was like, well, even if it sucked, he must know a thing or two about Jesus. Like he's not just pulling these metaphors out of his ass. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And he did write the book later, but he obviously had an interest in the subject. So is it? Oh, go ahead.
Was that for me?
I thought you were saying something.
No, I was pausing my mic because I was a little gassy.
Oh, okay, all right.
I thought that was
TMI, but it's all right.
Well, I mean, like you brought it up, so it's all right. I just ate a jalapeno bagel for breakfast, so it's that's gonna have an influence on you after you're 30. So
I avoid those kind of meals before podcasts. Actually,
it was worth it. It's so delicious. No, because whenever you're going like that, that's like my cue. If I need to like get up and do something, like I can just come back in a minute.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He's still talking about the Bible. It'll be cool.
Yeah, I can ramble on quite a bit.
I mean, when I listen to the
podcast,
like,
huh?
You're a historian. Like when you get talking about history, like that's your thing.
So first off, I'm not a historian. I have a degree in history. I never practiced history as like a profession.
You think about it, read about it, and talk about it all the time. I've literally never had a conversation with you where it didn't come up, man. Like you're not like getting
role-playing games are valid history works. I think that.
Yeah, no, sorry, man. You're not like. Yeah, sure, you're not published, but like in your soul, that's what you are. That's like part of your identity.
Well, I love history. I do love history. But I noticed that
historians and literally no one else.
I think a lot of people. My wife just said the other day that she loves history, and she's not a historian. But anyways, I don't know. I've noticed I sometimes interrupt people. I sometimes just keep talking, and so I'm. But if that's giving you an opportunity to go take care of things, then I guess that's a benefit to my bad manners on the podcast.
Jesus.
But you wanted to talk about Peter Weller as well, and I think that do we need to speak more about Paul Verhoeven before we get to that?
Oh man, no. Let's. Your energy is so high in this podcast. This is awesome. I'm going to enjoy listening to this later.
Okay.
We got to do more of these where you guys aren't falling asleep, because this is definitely the higher energy.
yeah. Let me clarify for people. Most of our podcasts are recorded. They're what we call late night podcast reviews or late night horror expresses or whatever, where me and Adam are just on the cusp of falling asleep, and Joel is the only one who's awake because he's in a different time zone. He also has like boundless energy compared to me and Adam. So we think we get lost in the woods during those podcasts. They're very I like to think of them as like if David Lynch directed a podcast, that's kind of how it would be, you know. You guys are the David Lynch fans, not me. So maybe that's a bad reference, but
But me and Adam are going to force you to watch Twin Peaks. That's going to be fun.
I really don't want to watch.
It's the only way you're going to understand your own references.
But I figured through osmosis, I have enough appreciation of what Lynch represents in the culture that I can make the reference. That I didn't need to see his whole catalog before I invoked it.
But the irony of the situation is we're doing one at 1 o'clock we started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon my time, and it's a day after I was incredibly sick all night and didn't get any sleep. And so I'm still lost in the woods, even though it's 2:15 p.m. my time. So
and I should say I didn't sleep much either. So I just got lucky today and didn't end up without energy. The raccoons were keeping me up all night. I have raccoons in my attic. I
was like, is that a metaphor? No,
not a metaphor.
Raccoons, huh?
No, I have real raccoons in my attic that crawl down. Like I hear them crawling down the wall, and it sounds like they're trying to get in the house. So it's very you can't sleep when it's happening because your body wants to be alert.
So anyway, about Peter Weller.
Yeah, so Peter Weller. Number one, Peter Weller's an interesting guy. I think he's like a professor of Roman history now, isn't he?
What?
Yeah, let me look that up. I'm pretty sure because I was watching a documentary like 12 years ago on Rome, and they brought in Peter Weller, and I was like, oh, they got an actor to do like this thing, and then under his thing it said Peter Weller, Roman historian.
What if he was just trolling them? What if he's like, I'm just an actor. I just acted like one of these things at the audition.
I think he went to school. Oh, so know what it is? Okay, so this is going by Wikipedia. Okay. In 2004, Weller completed a Master of Arts degree in Roman and Renaissance art at Syracuse University and occasionally taught courses in ancient history at the university. In 2007, he began a PhD at UCLA in Italian Renaissance art history. In October 2013, he filed his dissertation and was awarded his doctorate in 2014. So he's got a PhD in art history, it looks like.
He's a doctor. Yeah. Dr. Robocop. Ladies and gentlemen, the talented Peter Weller.
Well, it's funny because I was looking up interviews of Peter Weller last night, and I found this thing of him at a gaming convention or something where they were talking about RoboCop, and he starts talking, and it's like he slips into lecture mode, and it's like a super intelligent breakdown of Verhoeven and his use of metaphor and all these things. And it's surprising because you're just expecting him to say, yeah, RoboCop was fun to work on and the suit was heavy, but he just kind of gives a whole lecture on it.
So. There's a reason he's irreplaceable, or many reasons at least. Yeah, because I mean, okay, the suit was almost certainly very heavy, first of all. But like, second of all, like, okay, so, and you wouldn't think, it surprises me. Every time I watch all three movies, and I've only seen all three movies on a few occasions when I was younger, but every time I do it, and I'm sure it's going to hit me this time too, I know when it's Weller in the suit. You can only see a little patch of his face.
Yeah.
That he alone seems to have the capacity to sell that stupid robot suit. It's real dumb. The way
other
he walks
guys
is like fucking C-3PO, and yet you buy it with him. And you
the other guy's lips were all wrong. There was something about the lips on the other guy. They just
Well, there's something the physicality of movement too. People pick up on that more than they think. I mean, it's like you couldn't just put anybody in a Chewbacca suit and have them be Chewbacca. It's like
or Vader, the guy they had doing Darth Vader. Like you can really tell when it's not him.
Yeah. I think on YouTube too, there's even scenes where they have like him doing a catchphrase and then the guy in part 3 doing the same catchphrase, and it's just awful. When you look at them back to back in comparison. Peter Weller did a great job. Apparently, because of the size of the suit, that's why they casted him. They needed a thin guy because the suit was so big. They wanted to do Arnold or somebody like that, and the suit was it would have been weird looking to have it on a bigger guy.
It's pretty weird looking anyway, but...
Well, no, but then they also because you could only see his jawline, they also had to hire him based on his jawline. So they needed a thin guy and a guy with a really good jaw, and those were very big factors apparently in the casting. But yeah, I think he's great in this. I mean, I don't know what it is about Peter Weller. I remember after seeing RoboCop, I think the next movie he did was oh God, what was the name of it? Is it Leviathan? Was that the movie that he was in?
Yeah, Leviathan.
I never saw Leviathan.
Oh man, that's the only reason I saw Leviathan was because Peter Weller was in it. But he's just one of those actors. Like he's kind of likable in this way, but he's also very stoic and very, I don't know. He just has he has an interesting disposition.
Yeah, he does. I think that's a really good observation. He has an interesting disposition. Oh God, I'm watching a clip of RoboCop 3 right now, just silently on YouTube. Jesus, he's so bad.
Yeah,
I can't even hear him, and I know it's like you're right. His mouth looks wrong, the movements are wrong. Ew.
It's a fine line because the character because you can see why they would try to hire Arnold. They were trying to get a guy that was robotic, and he's playing a guy who's like a robot, but they have to have that flash of humanity in there, and it's like this really even blend by the end of the movie where he still needs to retain the roboticness, but also express the humanity. And I think that I would imagine, I'm not an actor, but that's got to be a very difficult thing to do.
It wouldn't have been as good with Arnold in it. I mean, it still would have been a good movie, but I don't think Arnold would have brought the same thing to it.
It wouldn't have had the scene where he's recuperating with Lewis and he's shooting the baby food. That when he takes off the helmet, it would have just had a different feel.
It would have been a good movie, but just not quite the great movie that it is my feeling.
It would have been okay. I don't think it would have done sequels.
I like Arnie movies from the 80s. It's not like I'm like, oh, you would have ruined it. There's just that
and there is a Verhoeven Arnold movie. So you do get that. You get it in Total Recall.
Yeah, that's true. And that was a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was.
But yeah, you could see the difference. Like imagine that character playing. Imagine that was Murphy. It would just be a totally different thing.
Yeah,
right?
there's just a certain seriousness to the character of Murphy that it's just a little heavier, I think, than what you get with Total Recall. For good or bad.
It's interesting too because they had to hire a thin guy who's like rail thin, really. Like it's the polar opposite. In the beginning of the film, when he's playing Murphy before he's in the suit, it is the polar opposite of an Arnold physique. So it's kind of I can't imagine Murphy with muscles. It just doesn't, I mean, I'm sure it would have been entertaining, like you say, but I can't really imagine it.
It does make for more of a transformation too, so it's more effective.
Yeah.
I mean, having a big muscly guy become a big muscly robot isn't as exciting as
he's transformed into the exact same thing.
Yeah, because it does let you know that the body is no longer important, right? Like he's a cyborg, but all of the power is coming from the suit. It's not coming from his body. In fact, they remove more parts of his body so they can get more machine onto him, right? Like they tried to save the left arm or something like that, and they're like, get rid of
that arm.
Well, to go on a video game tangent, if either of you, I know you haven't Brandon, but have you played XCOM at all? The video games.
Let me see.
They're turn-based kind of tactics. Like you're dealing with aliens invading, and you're basically kind of this underground force trying to prevent this alien invasion. But the thing in that game is over time you're managing your own soldiers as the resistance, but you're continually using alien technology to transform them either biologically or through cybernetics. And it's a really sinister thing because these aliens you're fighting seem to have no personality other than having this thing that just incorporates other alien races into how it can mechanically use them. So it's one of those kind of becoming your enemy if you're not careful situations.
Oh, that's cool.
But
I have not played that, but that sounds awesome.
It is, but the one thing in the art direction that kills me is like your soldiers at the beginning are all super burly and have this armor that looks kind of like action figures. They look kind of like 90s action figures, and it's like, yeah, it would be so much cooler if you just made them look like normal, early 21st century soldiers, and then had them become more and more like that. That's the reason the Arnie comparison reminded me of that. I was like, that always kind of bugged me. I'm like, this, because it is very evocative. They get the theme across in the game, but you could have done so much better if you just made it more normal at the beginning.
Just people notice contrasts. Even when we're not looking for them, we notice them,
Well, and also you get so little time with his character that every little aspect that adds to the personality, you know what I mean? Like just having him be thinner actually adds like a dimension to the character in a way.
This movie uses every atom of screen time brilliantly. Like it's a 90-minute movie, and like I think before the podcast started, I said it's a 90-minute movie we've been talking about for 20 years. Yeah. Every scene.
More than 20. It came out in 87, right? So what's that?
Well, 97? It came out in 87, but I came out in 86, so I didn't watch it in 87.
Okay.
You guys remember, you're old. You're old fogies.
I know. No, when I realized RoboCop is 30 plus years, when I realized that RoboCop is over 30 years old, trust me, you feel old when you realize something like that.
Yeah. But it's just the economy of this movie, the way you've got like essentially three kind of villainous characters. You've got Bob, and you've got Dick, and then you've got Bodeker, but they're all interlocking, but they all have kind of different positions in the world. So it's like it gives you three interesting characters, but you're also getting this picture of this larger framework just by them existing. I mean, this movie is so well put together.
I'm glad you also grouped Bob in with the villains, because I think the impulse is to make him not a villain because he gets killed by Dick Jones, and he's sort of presented as
definitely a villain.
He's like, I'll take his arm, he saved the arm. No, we'd read full prostheses. Let's get rid of that.
He's a minor villain because he's easy to intimidate and ultimately weak and disposable. The more effective villains dispatch him.
He's a character who he's jettisoned his morality in order to succeed in this landscape that he lives in.
Yeah.
But he hasn't developed the resources and the skill to survive like Boddicker or Dick Jones. So
but if he ended up as the number 2, he wouldn't be any better than Dick Jones ultimately. Is my impression.
Well, I think anyone serving in that role is ultimately pretty villainous and terrible, which is great.
Yeah.
There's no angels in this movie, not really. I mean, even if because even looking at Murphy, who becomes RoboCop, like he's pretty gung ho. He's pretty much cool with ignoring due process and shooting criminals. Like, he's the best we've got, but he's not a great guy. He's still pretty bad.
Well, I think so. My part of the thing that I think has to do with that too is that the setting is like
dystopian.
Yeah, it's dystopian to the extent that like it's actually like entered into like a low grade war between the criminals and the cops. I mean, but they do show them booking people. War, So
I mean, it is.
And keep in mind, this was the mid '80s too, when we were at the height of the crack epidemic, and the cities were really bad at the time too. It's like I mean, it was a pretty rough time back then.
But well, it's like the scene when the cops go on strike and they give the interview with that guy, the crazy guy. Like it's but yeah, I don't know, but I think your point is well taken though, Joel, because there really aren't any angels in this movie, like you're saying. Like, no. Lewis comes close. Lewis is kind of
okay. Lewis is an angel, but nobody else. Yeah. she's the sole angel. I'll give her that. I love her so much.
Yeah, she's a great.
She's a great character. I don't know, and also I just was surprised how efficiently they introduced her, because right away she kind of looks a little bit like Cynthia Rothrock. Do you know what I mean? She's got that similar kind of look, and immediately she's like kicking the guy, and they establish what she's all about. But they don't.
She's gung ho. She's good at her job, and she's a freaking cougar. She's I guess maybe Bobcat would be a better thing, but I mean, you know what I mean. She's small and ferocious, but I mean, she's a little cougar too, but that's neither here nor there. Also, they avoid any kind of weird romantic subplot with her. She's 100% and platonically Murphy's partner and respects him as a fellow officer. That's great.
I think that's true, though. I will say that scene where she's helping him aim the gun, like that's pretty. that's pretty phallic imagery, and like they're shooting baby food. Like I don't know that like the
they are
because that's the
baby
moment
food.
in the movie when the love interest and the hero have sex in every single action film, right? When they're like about to face the bad guy and they have like one night. It's like the Terminator or whatever it is. It's like the night before the storm.
See, it's interesting, but they kind of go in that direction in that scene, but they don't actually go anywhere in particular. It kind of hints at it, but they back away. So
well, they sort of do it, but then they just keep it on like the metaphorical level. I think. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that's kind of how
her helping him aim his gun, get his aim back, and then shoot baby food. Okay, that's as close as we're gonna get to a love scene. That's as erotic as it can be.
I'm just gonna say this because this time. When I was watching that scene, I was looking for that. I was like, okay, I want to really pay attention to this scene.
That's that's the scene. That's where it is in the movie. You're not wrong.
Yeah, definitely. If you see it again, like even like the expression on his face after he shoots the baby food, it's just there's something going on there.
He's got his groove back. His violence.
Well, yeah, he got his groove back. But either way, it's at least it is like an intimate scene where the two characters connect. Whether it's
just saying, if you happen to be Ace and you're looking for representation in action movies, you found it in RoboCop. Good. Yeah. Paul Verhoeven again ahead of his time. Good job, bro.
Well, I'm guessing like RoboCop must like if he's got like it doesn't look like he even would be capable of.
Oh no, not
of
at
anything, all. Right?
It's all smooth like a Ken doll down there, and all of his waste comes out in efficient, compact cube form.
That's They really need to do like a like the I don't know like one of those more art house RoboCop movies where they get into like the daily routine of RoboCop, so we get a better appreciation of.
Yeah, we just watched Tetsuo the Iron Man too.
Yeah, there you go. Just give him a drill. That worked out really good for Tetsuo. Also, give him the soundtrack from that movie. God, that's a good soundtrack.
So, I do want to talk about Kurtwood Smith, the guy who played Boddicker, because I think
yay.
Yeah. He's my favorite part of the movie, I think. I mean,
he's the best part of the movie, and that's hard to do in a movie this good.
Yeah, it's just that everyone is good, but I agree, he is the standout. He steals the movie.
Well, he steals this movie, and then he ends up making like he was like the reason to watch that '70s show. Do you know what I mean? Like just the fact that like that this guy was the guy that's the dad in that show. But no, so my note about Boddicker this time is what I like about Clarence Boddicker is like a lot of bad guys, he sacrifices his own men, but he makes excellent tactical choices when he does it. So like, he doesn't just kill, I think, who was it? Bobby? Was that the guy that he throws out the back of the van? Can you fly, Bobby? Isn't that the line?
Yeah. Fly, Bobby.
Yeah. This is a great line. But like a lot of villains just do that because they're mad at the minion. He's doing it for a reason, even though it's also demonstrating how callous and cruel he can be. So I like that. Like his character, he's not like, what do they call it? Like chaotic, stupid, or whatever. He's
he's smart and efficient, and he's full of braggadocio and a very particular sleazy kind of charm. Yeah. And he's just so good at murder. He almost kills Murphy twice. Like
yeah, and even the part where he does screw up and basically give all the information away to Murphy. It's believable at that point because Murphy was just about to kill him, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna throw anything at the wall and see what sticks." So it's an understandable thing to do. They didn't make him an idiot for doing that.
And apparently also, I guess the woman at the desk that he's flirting with on the way to Dick Jones' office, that's his actual wife, which I thought was kind of a fun thing.
Really? Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. It just kind of adds something to the scene because like when you realize it's his wife, it's like, oh, that must have made it like feel really different,
Well, that means that right after that scene, like wrapped for the day, she went up to him, both of them in costume, and like, you know what, you're right, let's go out. And they
that's true. Well, and I think
scene for me.
Yeah. So I think they were married before the movie. So I think but I could be amazing
if they weren't. If that was
that's where they met.
If that was how he charmed her.
Him sticking gum on the thing was
just being complete sleazeball, and she's like, this guy's got something. I gotta tell this
all the
bald guy,
all the scars all over his face that he had, like all the latex scars.
No, dude, chicks dig confident guys that are clearly visibly mutilated. If all media has ever can be trusted, I mean, like Phantom of the Opera, Beauty and the Beast, all of it. If you're hideously scarred and confident as a dude, especially if you're a musician, bam, that apparently that does it.
Well, the thing that I like about that scene is how like he has the confidence to do that. Like when he's just been in this terrible scrap with rope. Like he looks like a mess. It looks like, and you're not even sure that he's showered. Do you know what I mean? It looks like he maybe hasn't showered.
He definitely didn't shower.
Yeah. So, but he just doesn't care. He just asks her out. It's an amusing scene.
Well, and then he puts Dick Jones in his place. Dick Jones chews him out. And he's just like, okay, look, we're gonna take care of this Robocop problem, this us problem. And like we're gonna make sure we establish who's in charge here. Still Clarence Bodiger, baby. Bodiger is on top.
Well, I think that scene really helps to give you a sense of his character and why he is like the mob boss of old Detroit in the movie, right? Like you kind of see it too when he's dealing. I think there's like a mafia boss that he's dealing with the
Oh yeah, that's
the guy drinking the water. He's like the most
guns.
Yeah. But yeah, he's just he doesn't get intimidated by people. It seems he's able to relax and to push back, but he doesn't push back so far. It's like there's not like an insecurity that causes him to push back too much that he shatters things.
With the Jones scene, I mean, he just walks away. It's like, oh, I need you to kill Robocop. Like, nah, heck with that. He just starts to leave and like makes him pull him back. It's like, just a bargaining move there.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna be friends after all, right? That's
great.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's great. That actor is wonderful, but this is the role that I think really, I don't know, just I on it like. Go ahead.
He should have won an Oscar for this. Like the Academy's full of idiots.
Oh yeah.
Because this to them was probably some mindless action movie, but man, it really is an unbelievable performance. He steals every scene he's in,
and people remember this character. Like he really stands the test of time. This guy, everybody remembers him.
So many quotable lines from this movie. Well, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where that comes from.
But the other thing I did want to talk about is what is it? The 600 sucks or the 6,000 sucks?
Oh yeah, the SUX.
Yeah, because again, it's what is it? Bigger is better, right? That was and the guy, but then one of his guys buys one of it. Like it's a joke throughout the movie, but then one of his guys actually gets one, or I think he steals it. I don't know if he bought it.
Yeah, no, they steal it.
But he shows up and they have those big guns, and then he just blasts the SUX with the gun, and it's just this escalation of big versus big. Just everything keeps getting bigger.
It also that's the car that's requested by the guy who's got the city hall set hostage. Like it's part of their world. Like they commit to that bit.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. It's a running joke, and that scene is also very. What is it? It's the city councilman who loses the election and he's holding the mayor hostage. That scene is very amusing. He's like, what does he say? I want something big with shitty gas mileage, right?
He's really specific about it. But the 6,000 SUX, that'll work. I don't want some coffee. It's just so petty and short-sighted. It's wonderful. Like you wonder why you might have lost this election, bro.
Well, it's obviously like the criminal version of a temper tantrum. Like I can't imagine that he's expecting that any of these things are gonna last beyond the day, right? But yeah. So and also like other elements of the thing that exist in the world, like Liaococa Elementary School, right? Like it just kind of gives you a sense of like just the things that are valued in the society. The commercials with like Nukem, right? Was that the name of the game?
Nukem was great. I want that game so hard.
What I liked about that game was that all of the things that people were saying were like they were fairly sophisticated things for a family, like little kids to be.
Right, they clearly had this like grasp of like nuclear geopolitics, which was really compelling and funny.
Yeah, because there's one line there. It's like, okay, that's it. I'm canceling our foreign aid. Like it's just, I forget. It's like that wasn't the exact language, but it was something like
that. Yeah, it was something that was that funny though.
Yeah,
That out of the mouth of an 8-year-old is like pure comedy gold.
It's stuff like if you read the news about like North Korea and stuff like that, like these are the things that get brought up in those kinds of news stories.
I'd like to point out that every single commercial in this, the fake commercials, are some of the best cinema I've ever seen. They really feel like commercials when you're watching them. They knew exactly how to make it feel like a commercial.
Well, they do a good job
too. The news and all the news segments are just.
What was that one about the Star Wars defense system misfiring and like blowing up a hospital or something?
Well, they were making fun because they were making fun of the Star Wars program.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's why they have the president go aboard and like the gravity gets disrupted because you're supposed to in your mind imagine Ronald Reagan up there because of the Star Wars program.
Well, no, I think you're supposed to imagine Ronald Reagan, the 2 former presidents that are living in Santa Barbara that get hit by the missile.
That's possible.
I say by the way.
Yeah, that actually makes more sense.
I think that was the Ronald Reagan there.
Okay, that would make sense. That would make sense. But yeah, that was and it starts like the wildfires, and then and what's funny is how glib they are about, like what was it, 133 people died, including 2 former presidents, and then just kind of move on to the next news item.
Next bullet point.
Yeah.
Notice how smiling they are through every single story on that. It's perfect.
And the woman was from Entertainment Tonight, wasn't she? Wasn't that the lady from Entertainment
One of those,
Tonight?
yeah, that or Access Hollywood, one of those shows. Yeah. I've forgotten which one she was on.
If they weren't on one of those shows, they should have been, because, man, they were cast perfectly for it. Yeah. Everything in this movie is just perfect.
Lisa Gibbons, that's her name.
That's it. Yeah.
Her name, even if I don't remember what show she was on.
I kept wanting to call her Debbie Gibson, and I knew that was wrong, so I was like, I'll just say she was on Entertainment Tonight.
Right time period.
But yeah, no, all those elements really help to create a sense of the world that exists there. So and they're so funny. Like the heart one too. It's just, I don't know. It's perfectly done. And then I love it, just like the end of it where he's walking away and like as he's leaving. And by the way, we care. Just that.
I know, it's so fake. And the one with the dinosaur, like I remember seeing that the first time in the theater, and all of a sudden there's just this city shot with a really fake looking dinosaur. It's like, what's happened? Oh, it's a commercial. Okay, you just don't get expect that in a theater. So it really caught me off guard the first time.
All right.
Yeah. So,
we haven't even mentioned like Ed 209 yet. That's one of my favorite parts of this movie. Ed 209. Well, because I don't know if it's thwarted expectation or not, because like when they introduce Ed, like he blows the one guy up. So you're like, he's malfunctioning, so you're like, this thing is huge and unwieldy and dangerous. And then it fights RoboCop and it's whooping his ass pretty good. And then it falls down a flight of stairs and gets stuck on its back like a turtle and makes a squealy pig sound.
It's a shitty design, so like that, it's perfect because like it malfunctions at the beginning, but that's clearly not its only problem. It just they didn't think, they just went for like as big and intimidating as they could, and they didn't think about this thing needs to go downstairs. This thing needs to be able to get through narrow doorways. It's just a ridiculous embodiment of like. I mean, again, I think it's sort of, like American firepower is kind of what they're.
Oh, yeah, and at the end of the movie, he just blows it up with like a single shot.
And it's also complete overkill because, like, in that scene, the guy is holding a handgun up to him, and it's like these are like guns that you would expect to be on a jet plane, on like a jet plane.
Yeah, it's got like twin Vulcan cannon levels of stuff that it's putting against this guy. It's just like urban pacification.
Yeah, because then there's the scene when RoboCop pulls up and it's like you're parked in an illegal spot, and it immediately gets into like I'm gonna shoot you stance, right? So
absolute disregard for human life. That's not even a consideration.
And it's all about the bottom line, because Dick Jones even says, he's like, I had all the contracts lined up. They were going to buy, like dozens of it. Was it?
Yeah, perhaps more about the
Ed 209.
Yeah, Ed 209.
Yeah, they were going to buy dozens of Ed 209s. Who cares if it worked, right? That was the
right. That's not the important part to him. The important part is making the move, making the deal, making the line go up.
Yeah,
I love that. There's so much about this. A great embodiment.
Yeah, it feels like the program was designed originally purely military, and then when this need for, cops on the Delta City thing, he's like, "Oh, this is perfect." He's just, yeah, I've got the perfect plan right here.
Yeah.
Just so
Yep, already got a plan, sir.
Something. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it was less about it was less about having a good plan and more about having a ready plan.
That he controlled, yeah. These
Yep.
kill bots will make perfect police.
I like that they didn't even take the anti-tank war rounds out of it for the demonstration.
I know.
Really yeah.
I know.
Well, yeah, it's funny because it's like the most funny scene, but also the most violent scene in the movie, and it's the scene that everybody remembers from the film too. I think
that was actually the clip they would use when they were promoting the show. Like,
oh yeah, that's the clip you'd use
in reviews.
But I also I love it.
Obviously, they cut the violence out of it, but
I also love also the guy that gets shot is the guy that's in the elevator with Bob, and what's the other character's name? I can't remember, but he was the guy from Dirty Harry.
Was it?
Yeah, Felton Perry. Donald Johnson was his character's name. So Donald Johnson and Bob are in the elevator with that guy, and then he's the one that gets selected to pick up the gun. And then after, Bob doesn't give a shit that this guy got he doesn't
bat an eye about it.
Yeah, Donald Johnson seems to care. Huh?
Yeah, he's like, the guy died, and he's like, that's OCP for you, and just moves on with his day.
No, he said that's life in the big city for you. Like that was like But I love the reaction of the old man where he's like, "Dick, I'm very disappointed." Like it's somebody just got killed
chastising lightly. Yeah.
This is going to cost us $50 million in interest payments alone. Is his big problem with it?
Well, they're not even concerned for their own well-being and safety. Like you would think everybody in the room, if they didn't care about the guy, they'd be like, "Oh, that could have been me. I could have died." Or are we going to be safe the next time? So like they don't care at all. They're just worried about profit and so. I don't know. I think that scene is kind of. I think people remember it also because it kind of captures the spirit of the film. In a lot of ways. But we should talk about Bob a little bit because I think he is an interesting character. Who's the actor that plays him? Miguel Ferrer? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. You really have to see Twin Peaks if you want to appreciate it.
You guys are just pushing the Twin Peaks.
He's the coroner in that one, and he's really good. He's only in what 1 or 2 episodes.
More than that.
He takes a punch to the face, and then he quotes Martin Luther King, and he's really good in it. Brendan, you're missing out.
I'm sure he's great. You guys are like, there's like drug dealers around the corner from me that like are less pushy about the drugs they sell than you guys are about Twin Peaks.
I don't even really care if you watch it as much as I'm having fun kind of bringing it up every chance I get.
I care.
Watch it or not.
Watch Twin Peaks. Do yourself a favor.
But anyways, Miguel Ferrer, I think he's great in this movie. I think that he's it's easy to forget about him because there's so many other memorable elements of the film. But he's such a prick. Like he really is like and that's overshadowed by Boddicker. Like there's a lot of dicks in this movie, like Boddicker, Dick Jones, like literal dicks. But this guy's also a dick. And I don't know. I think that like you can even see little things like his character starts using cocaine more and more you could like when they're building the Robocop thing, you can tell he's on cocaine just by how he's acting. And then they literally show him with cocaine when he's got the 2 women in his house. And what ultimately seems to do him in is he does not take Dick Jones seriously enough. He doesn't see him as a real threat, and he doesn't understand. No, this guy will actually kill you if you screw him over. He thinks it's not at that level. He thinks that Dick Jones is going to hate him. They'll be enemies, but he'll be professional.
He's a prick and he's amoral, but he's not immoral. He's not. I don't think he's actually breaking any laws in what he's doing. Like he doesn't actually. He makes cops for the cops, and he does business without ethics and ruthlessly. But like aside from doing cocaine, did he break any laws? Like he's not. He doesn't have any. Like he doesn't have criminal henchmen. He's not trying to bring in a bunch of drugs and take a cut for himself. Like I don't think he's evil. I think he's just awful.
he's just very corporate. I don't think that he's meant to be like again, like Adam was saying, you could see like once he gets to Dick Jones' position, he has power, he'll probably be making decisions that cost people their lives or whatever because of greed, but he's not doing the stuff Dick Jones is doing, where he's like hiring mobsters and murdering people. And
he's not diversifying his portfolio into crime.
His evil is his evil is more an absence of good than actively pursuing it.
I mean, he's wormy and opportunistic, and he again, there's not a shred of humanity left in him, because again, that scene where they're like, we saved his arm, and he's like, toss the arm, he's a robot. That's a really good way of conveying that character. It's just it's not that he's evil and wants to do harm to Murphy. He doesn't see Murphy's humanity as anything important at all. That's not even a consideration for the guy. He's like, no, stronger arm. That's it.
And he's likable too as a character. So you kind of, even though he's kind of a prick, you sort of root for him a little bit. And I think
that's a Miguel Ferrer thing. I mean, I'm not trying to rub the Twin Peaks thing, but his character in that is a huge jerk a lot of the time. But he's just so entertaining. You don't care that he's a huge jerk. It just works.
Yeah, I think in this movie that's definitely the case too. And I don't know. I find that the thing that I find interesting when you watch it again is, like when in a lot of movies, like when I rewatch them, the way that I kind of know that they made the right creative choice is I'm still kind of saying, why? Like, if you only did this would have happened instead, and you would have been happy. Which would have made a worse movie, but it's like you have that impulse as a viewer. And I find with his character, like, if he had just gone through Dick Jones with the Robocop thing, he wouldn't have been murdered. Do you know
or I don't think he could have gone through Dick Jones, but if he made peace with him after he went over Dick Jones' head, he's been, okay, here's what I'm going to offer you.
Well, no, but he
needed to make some kind of peace offering after that. And instead, he went on the warpath with Dick Jones, which was.
But I think he could have gone through Dick Jones by allowing Dick Jones to take credit for Robocop as his contingency plan while he worked out the kinks for the Ed 209. Do you know what I mean?
I see. Like at that point,
like if he had gone to him, because remember, Dick Jones says, "Isn't this a conversation that we could have had in our?" And it gets cut off.
Yeah, by the old man. You're right. You're totally. I was thinking a different time frame of it, but yeah, that's totally true.
But with him, it's just you can just see how, and then like, even if he, like you were saying though, even after the fact, if he had just not stepped in it in the bathroom and insulted Dick Jones while he's on the toilet, it
was over the line.
But that's also a very good scene. That scene where it starts off so polite, and then you really see how dangerous Dick Jones is by the end.
The one guy who runs out has a stain because he's just in such a hurry. It's just like that really conveys it.
It reminds me of the scene in Carlito's Way where Sean Penn is walking into the prison to talk to his client. He's like walking in, you can tell it's a good day, and then by the time he walks out of it, he's vomiting and he's sick and he's worried about it's just that scene where the guy walks into the room, he's on cloud nine, and then by the time he leaves, it's got to be, a really bad day for him. I like that trajectory, that scene. So yeah, I don't know. What other elements of the movie should we discuss? I don't want to leave anything out.
Man, again, I could talk about this movie for hours and hours and hours. Jesus. I don't know. We kind of hit almost every single character, though. And here is an important thing about this movie. It has a lot of heart because it has such strong, memorable, and human characters at its core. For all the inhumanity about the way they act, the people are very likable. Like, all of them are memorable, and you're just thrilled when they're on the screen. I think when you talk about this movie, if you don't talk about the characters, I think you're doing a disservice to the heart of the movie. So I think that we talked about all the characters, didn't we?
Yep.
I think so. I mean, sometimes, I have to check my notes, but I'm pretty sure we covered all the characters and we covered all the topic. We a lot of this is organic, but we sometimes have a list of things we want to bring up, and I everything that I've written down we've covered. The only thing that I didn't address is apparently so I was watching an interview with Paul Verhoeven at a convention, and in the interview he was saying how what his creative contributions were to the script, and the one scene that he added was the scene that when he shoots through the dress at the rapist.
That's a great scene.
Yeah, he's like, that was me.
Scene.
That was the one thing I added to the script, which I thought was funny because that's such a, like, if there was anything that he added to it, that would be the thing that you would expect from Paul Verhoeven. And that's also a very, like, I remember as a kid being so impressed with that scene because a lot of action movies at that time were all about how, how like the guy could shoot against the wall and ricochet the bullet and kill the bad guy. And that kind of takes it to such ridiculous levels, but then immediately as a viewer, you're also crippled with pain because you just saw a guy get shot in the groin. And I don't think the only two movies I can think of where I've even seen that happen is Robocop and Hateful Eight. There must be another movie, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
So in our RoboCop remake, they extend that scene and have just a mob of rapists attack, and he shoots all their dicks off, and it's extremely funny. So if you guys have a chance, check that shit out on YouTube. It's
Wait, what do you I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so they did a RoboCop. There was like this crowdsourced RoboCop remake where people would shoot like 3 minutes of footage. And one of the scenes that got shot was an almost beat for beat exact remake of that scene. It's convincing enough. It looks like it's part of the movie.
Okay.
And they just added dozens and dozens of rapists who flooded in from off camera, and RoboCop's just going to town shooting all their dicks off. It's amazing. It's like 5 solid minutes of dick shooting.
I think they made the right choice with just the two guys and the.
No. Their restraint was wise, but if you really want to indulge in some dick destruction, look that up on YouTube. It's worth your time.
Okay. I mean, the thing about this, well, the thing that I think makes the scene effective is that it's painful to watch that sort of a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like that, like I said, like in the Hateful Eight, it's like you just can't stop thinking about how painful that must be. So it affects you as a viewer.
You always kind of, because obviously you're supposed to think, did he just shoot this guy's entire penis off? Like, God,
I think is what happened. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think he totally like emasculates this guy with a bullet because like you saw what that gun, like they were wise to bookend that with the scene of him shooting the target and it ripping the target in half. Like these are not small bullets and they're not shot slow. This thing is like this ridiculous gun. So even getting shot once with it is like serious business. Yeah, if you're shot right in the nards, like I don't think they're gonna survive, man.
I don't either. I do not either. I think that I also think that with this scene and with, like you were saying, with the Hateful Eight scene, your thought is what's the extent of the damage? Like and less so in this scene because you don't really care about the guy that gets shot. In the Hateful Eight, you kind of care about the Samuel L. Jackson character, but I still think you are curious, like but again, at the very least, he's got testicles.
Damage the ball sack took specifically.
But also after that, when the woman goes up to RoboCop, it kind of highlights the lack of humanity that he has at that point.
Yeah, that's a really good line.
Where he's like, "You have suffered a trauma, and I am going to, send you or alert the nearest rape crisis center." It's just this. It's like you have
suffered an emotional shock.
Yeah,
like he doesn't try to comfort her at all. Doesn't even occur to him. He's like, "This is the proper procedure. Going to shoot the next penis."
Intellectually, he gets it and he understands what needs to be done, but he doesn't connect to the situation at all. It's just the emotional distance is very apparent in that scene.
I like his struggle to reclaim the important parts of his humanity and fuse it into a new identity. I think that's really cool. Because I love the scene where he's walking through his house that his wife sold after he quote unquote died, and he's like flashing back to all of his human memories and like again having like this moment of like real genuine crisis. There's a lot of cool stuff like that in this movie. But what I love about it is they don't fully resolve it. Like he doesn't really get to be human anymore, but he gets to have something of his humanity back, and that seems to be sufficient for him now. Like he doesn't get to be a person, but his robot mask comes off, and you get to see his person face for the last
movie. In a movie like this that has to be this efficient, it's a little bit like a wuxia movie where the costume has to do a lot of the work, And so taking off the mask is how they resolve it, I think. And a little bit of the exchange between him and Lewis, and you see change in the character, but they don't have time to do like a 20-minute deep dive into his reclaiming of his humanity. It's very efficiently done.
I like the first part of the movie. His humanity fails him and he dies, right? He gets shot up by a bunch of criminals. But in the second half of the movie, his robotic elements fail him. His programming betrays him, and then he gets shot up by a bunch of cops.
Yeah.
And he emerges from both of them. Like, he comes back in a way from both of them by using the two halves in the last little bit of the movie.
No, that's a good point. It's kind of like
it's brilliant. It's ingenious writing.
Yeah, because I was kind of curious. I was like, wait a second. Like, I understand why he gets crucified once and comes back, because that's sort of the story. But why does it happen twice? Do you know what I mean? Like, and so that does explain it. That's an interesting point.
You can't rely on either of them. The movie's about finding a balance of the elements of himself.
Also, just an interesting thematic connection. Basil Polidorus does the music to this. He's my favorite.
The Robocop.
My favorite film composer. And he did the music to Conan, and the music is very reminiscent of the Conan music. A lot of Basil Polidorus soundtracks kind of reminiscent, but this is very reminiscent to Conan.
Those are some of my favorite soundtracks.
But Conan's also a movie where he gets crucified, dies, and comes back from the dead. So I wonder if that fed into the decision to hire Basil Polidorus. I don't know. I just was curious if that was.
I think if I'd heard the Conan soundtrack and like that was an option, I would never choose anyone else.
No, maybe, I feel the same. Like, that's an amazing. Like, again, if anybody has not heard the Conan the Barbarian soundtrack, that's probably one of the best movie sound. It's like up there with Ennio Morricone music. I rarely would compare someone to Ennio Morricone, but yeah. You know what Ennio Morricone soundtrack does not get enough attention is the Hamlet soundtrack that he did. I don't know if it's later material. It's like 1990 Hamlet. It's actually really good. He did the soundtrack to that, and he did the soundtrack to Wolf also.
He did Wolf. I forgot about Wolf.
Yeah, he's done. There's a lot of movies that like people don't associate his name with as much. They're just not as well known, But the Hamlet one actually has a lot of really good music, and there was one song in there when I first started learning to play guitar. I think it's called "Dance to the Queen" or something like that. That was one of the first songs I learned on guitar because I thought the melody was so nice. But yeah, I do think it's interesting that his other big movie is Conan, and that has it uses a very similar Jesus metaphor. And I think also the music of Conan invokes that story. Do you know what I mean? He uses a lot of music that kind of invokes the Jesus story. And so it's also happening here as well. So, even musically, the kind of is connected to it. But yeah, so I don't know. The other thing I wrote down that he died at 6:15. And I was just curious if there was any significance to that number that people could, I couldn't think of anything. Yeah, that's the time of death when Murphy dies is 6:15. But might be meaningless. I just thought that it was interesting. I had seen it enough times that I could start paying attention to background information, and so that was one of the things that I wrote down.
6:15.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know if that's significant or not. I mean, it's pretty specific.
Yeah, it's specific, and maybe it's something that's so obvious we're just not noticing it.
It might be like the position of the hands or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is interesting. But again, it could be meaningless. So I don't know. Anything else we want to add? We're kind of we're talking about the time of death of Murphy. We're probably at the very end.
I just want to say his little hand spike thing is the coolest thing ever, and I'm glad that he gets to punch Clarence Boddiger's face off with it.
That was super cool. I also like that it had a function, that he used it to interface with the computer system, it seemed like, but then he was able to also use it as a weapon. Was very satisfying.
That's my favorite Chekhov's gun that ever got fired, because like the guy's like, you can't come in here, blah, blah. And he takes his hand and he flips it open and there's a giant fucking spike in there.
Yeah.
And instead of stabbing him with it, he just puts it in the database calmly.
And it's a middle finger too. It's also a middle finger. Which is
again, this movie works on so many levels. And like my first thought, everyone's first thought is he's going to get stabbed with this fucking thing. You know, like this is a violence robot. It's going to use violence to solve its problems. No, it just uses procedure. But you want him to stab. It's so stab. It's like a punch dagger, right? You're just like, but I want to see the stab.
You want to see that used. You want to see it get used in that way because it's obvious why. And they knew to
tease you with it until they used it to kill your favorite bad guy.
Which was a really good death scene because he's got Robocop at that point. You know what I mean? Like he's tearing him open with a crowbar or something. Or a makeshift crowbar, and then he just stabs him right in the jugular, and it really works. That scene is perfect.
That is maybe the most singularly satisfying scene ever put to film. It's incredible.
Well, I love
if you got to kill Clarence Bodiger, you have to make it the most satisfying thing ever. Because otherwise, it's kind of a tragedy to lose a character that good.
The other thing I kind of want to talk about with that scene is I always like the math at the end of a movie when they have to take out like the minions of a boss or something, and it's like you're kind of keeping track of how many are left and how effective, you know what I mean? And it's like, is there still anybody that can do anything? And it's like they still keep that one to go in there and drop the crane of goods on them. It's very, that last scene makes very good use of minion math, I think.
Clarence Boddicker knew how to use the whole buffalo when it came to minions.
And also the scene with the toxic waste, which we didn't even get into.
Oh, yeah, the guy gets dunked in toxic waste. Yeah. I think that, here's the thing. The million words have been spilled on a million podcasts about the toxic waste dummy, right? Like the mutant makeup on that guy when he gets hit by the car and explodes like a can of SpaghettiOs in a microwave. Like, all right, we all know how rad that is. But everybody leads with that. We're going to end with that. That's the image I want to splatter all over your memory before you get out of this podcast.
Waste. Okay,
the toxic waste scene.
The fact, like, why the toxic waste is even there in the first place, you know, just all these things. But that scene, I also at that time I feel like, remember how like I sometimes say like back when karate was magic. This is also when toxic waste was magic. When he just threw toxic waste, like it's Toxic Avenger era filmmaking, and so it's just got that. It's got that trace of Toxic Avenger in the movie that I really like.
It definitely felt like a Toxic Avenger nod, no question about that.
Also the way that they make use of it, where he's like, that guy is suddenly like, you know, asking everybody to help him, and the one guy from the crew that he goes up to is the guy with like the nice hair who definitely wouldn't want a toxic waste infected human being touching him. And the look of horror on that guy's face, it's just, the scene really works. So all right, we'll end it there and we'll be back. I don't know if I know we have to do Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon on Wuxia Weekend, and we have to probably do another horror movie at some point, but we might be back next with Robocop 2, which I'm now really looking forward to, and really not looking forward to part 3, which we'll also be back with.
Watching all of them is like remembering having a puppy and having a dog that its tragic end in some terrible accident.
Yeah.
Like it really is pretty awful.
Part 3 is like having your puppy killed for sure. It's definitely that emotional note of a film.
It is the Highlander 2 of Robocop movies, people.
So, the Highlander 2 is in a special category of badness that we will talk about when we talk about part 3.
We might, this might be like a Until It Was Awful kind of series where we're just like, we're going to watch Robocop until it's awful. Now we're going to watch Highlander until it's awful.
I don't know if I could do.
You can even do that with Star Wars, man. You can watch Star Wars until it's awful, all the way up to movie 4.
Well,
you heard me, Star Wars fans.
So it's very 2017. The Star Wars. So, anyways, we'll head out, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.